So today we have with us Dr. Mamie Parker, the first African American appointed to the Senior Executive Service at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about social sustainability. And it's my pleasure to welcome up Dr. Parker.
Good morning. Wait a minute, I'm an African American Creole Cajun that happens to be a girl raised in the South. And when I call, I like to feel welcomed by you responding. Good morning.
Good morning.
That sounds much better. In fact, it's even better than what I heard when I was in Arkansas last week. So I think I'll stay a while. It's really, really an honor for me to be here today and talk to you all, and I gotta get my notes here together and talk to you about what I think is important. But I also realize from just interacting with all of you all here this morning and having the privilege of interacting with people for a few months now here in Maryland, even though I'm from Virginia and live in Virginia, Virginia is for lovers. But what I notice here is that there's a love for natural resources here, so there's a love for your community. So you've been sitting for a while, so let me just take a poll. If you are in love with Baltimore and Maryland and all that it's about, stand up right now, stand up. If you are in love with partnerships, stand up right now, partnerships in the community. I'm looking around and most of you all are up. And so I just want you to know that another thing we do in my culture, not only do we call when you respond, but we talk to our neighbors. So look at your neighbor now and say, I'm just a love machine. Speech at Duke University, and the dean told me later, he said, I don't ever recall the time looking at a faculty member and telling them I'm just a love machine. Neither did the Chinese when I had a chance to go over there and talk to them, to hear them talk about being love machines. So it's really exciting to be here. I want to spend time a little bit talking about people now and foundations. We've heard a lot about already number of things that are going on in terms of processes, and we've heard a lot about programs, but we know that these things cannot be done without people. Things that cannot be done without people. So as we've heard already from Kristen, we've talked about the economy, we've talked about the environment, and now we're going to talk about the engagement and how important it is to have people involved in that. I'm going to take a personal privilege here because I am new to the community and haven't been around for a while. That's a picture of my mother. And my mother had already had 5 boys and 5 girls. And she was about to have her 11th child. And she said, I'm going to make sure that this child gets to enjoy some of the things that I enjoy. She loved the outdoors. She was an avid angler and a great gardener. And so she said, this is my last child, and I'm going to get her outside. And so that's how I stand here today. And I have a quote here that's one of my favorite. All that I am and that I hope to be, I owe it to my mother because she introduced me to Mother Earth. And why I think that's important, because today we're talking about foundations. And most of you in this room, you probably have some individual that really touched your life, that made you want to do what you're doing. When we think about our community organizations, the volunteers that are there, it was somebody that really influenced us and motivated us to get outdoors. And so I give that round of applause, thank you, to my mother and my own lady. Thank you, Mother. It was almost 40 years ago that I joined the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and it's really great to be able to hear from the last speaker that talked about some of the work that the Corps of Engineers has done, because when I left Arkansas to go to school, I ended up going to Wisconsin, and it was in the Great Lakes that I had a chance, and the big rivers, to work with a lot of Corps of Engineers districts, seeing great work that they've done, doing great things right there. And dredging was a part of it. When I first started my job in Green Bay, Wisconsin, they gave me this huge Rivers and Harbors book, and they told me I needed to learn all I needed to know about Section 10404 permits. And that's when I started my career in conservation. And so I'm grateful here today to know that when we talk about foundations and we talk about where we've moved, not only are we talking about what we've done in the past, but we have to understand when we talk about climate change, that there's also a change in the climate. And that change really means that in this society, what I have seen is a change in people that are more engaged in conservation, they're more engaged in their communities, and we have realized as government agencies and others that we have to engage our citizens in the process of solving problems. I'm grateful for the work that Dr. Goodwin and others have talked about already, so I don't have to repeat any of that, but I do want to move on one slide in particular, and that is, as we talk about 2018 and all the great things that you've done, that Dr. Goodwin mentioned in that report, we also have to celebrate what's right in the world. And I was the regional director of the Northeast, 13 Northeastern states from Maine down to Virginia, West Virginia. And I got called many names, some of which I can't even repeat here today. But the one I'm most proud of is the Celebration Queen. And this is what I see when we think about 2018 and when we look at that report that my colleagues, Steve Patterson and Jody and others around this room helped create some great things. And so today we're going to celebrate what's right in the world when we think about our stakeholders. We're going to celebrate by talking about the fact that these agencies, MDOT, MPA, and others, Corps of Engineers, all of the groups around the table, the states, the Maryland Department of the Environment, we've all know that we needed to ride the wave of change. We know that we had to go beyond our boundaries to get where we are in 2019. But we also know that individually, we had to be the best for the world, and we had to fix what's wrong. And so, as we look into 2020, we're going to be more inspired to do some great things. So, social sustainability, engagement, it's all about, as we said earlier, the economy, the environment, and then socially, our foundation. All of this is about, we're talking about is about relationships. Relationships that were formed in many of your committees that you've had over time. Communications, how important is that? You hear that all of the time. How important it is to communicate with others. And then the educational piece, where we've had to engage our public to make them a little bit more educated on the things that we are doing in the environment. And again, that's all about engagement. So in terms of a changing climate, here are some of the things that I think that I've watched over the years that have changed quite a bit. Our partnerships. There was a time when we didn't work very well and very closely with the regulatory community, but we figured out a way to do that better now. Our communities are doing a great job in terms of revitalization and development. It's going on all over this country now, and in fact all over this world, and I have a chance to get to see that quite often. Look at our changing demographics. We know what demographics, we know what's going on in our country. We know what's going on in this world and how important it is for us to be there. In terms of climate change itself and its impacts, you've heard a lot about the impacts, you've heard a lot about how communities are getting engaged. We are hearing the word climate change equity more often. And that's because people of color and other people in poor communities are really speaking up, or others are speaking up on their behalf and telling them we wanted some equity in this planning process. I've watched, as I said earlier, all of these organizations and how you guys have done an outstanding job in engaging your stakeholders. This is one of my favorite slides here because it talks about going beyond those boundaries. It talks about everyday greatness. It talks about stretching ourselves and how it might not be always easy when we go out and find partners and when we go out and look for people to work with. But we have to express and express ourselves. But the second one talks about really priority setting. And that's what I've seen people like Kristen and others that have come into this new job and saying that we have to set some priorities, we have to stick to them, we have to make sure that we're all on one accord and that we're not stretching ourselves all over the place. That's one of my favorite books. It's about finding that one thing and doing it really, really well. And again, it's about collective as well as individual actions. And it's all about inclusion. And as I look around this room, it looks somewhat more diverse than a lot of rooms that I go in. However, there's always room for improvement in terms of collaboration, in terms of establishing our credibility as well as transparency. And when I talk about credibility, I'm reminded of a story that I shared with the group not too long ago. And it was about when I worked with the farmers in Missouri. I had the privilege of working with farmers on growing wildlife on their land, Partners for Fish and Wildlife program. And those farmers weren't very happy about the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service at the time, because again, the Fish and Wildlife Service was there to stop them from doing what they wanted to do. And so they sent people like me out there to try to talk to them and tell them the importance of growing wildlife on their land. And this one day, I was in this barn with a group of farmers, about 50 of them. And I was telling them how important it was and how they could get paid to do easements on their lands and set lands aside. And what I realized after a while is that I had little credibility with them because they were accustomed to people like me from the government that was not always transparent, that were not always good listeners. And that was one of the things that I had to realize the hard way. And so this was an amazing experience because the farmer said to me, he said, "You are worried about endangered bats, and we are trying to raise beans to feed our babies." And he said, "You should be home having babies." That was my first reaction too. But I realized that credibility, inclusion, collaboration began with the end in mind. That's what Dr. Covey talked about in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's what Mr. Jim has been talking about when he talked about what's going on at the port. It's all about collaboration. So I reached down, grabbed some soil in my hand, and I shared it with that farmer that I too had grown up on a farm. I talked to him about being the daughter of a sharecropper. I talked to them about my life and the fact that I was the illegitimate child of my mother that was often teased because my father was a prominent man that lived on the other side of town. Building that credibility. But I also realized that what they needed to do is hear what my mother had told me to say a long time ago. She said, listen. And she said, write the words, the letters in the word listen are the same letters in the word silent. And I promised them that I would listen and be a listener. Again, building credibility. As we talk about sustainable engagement with our stakeholders, we have to build that credibility, and we have to be great listeners. And that's what I've seen with the Port of Baltimore. And again, we're celebrating what's right in the world. These are some of the things that I've seen them do a wonderful job in 2019. The tree planting in the neighborhood, cleaning up those projects, the port tours, to get the people out there to see what's going on so they can feel connected. Good neighbor policies. Again, I mentioned the diverse stakeholders and how important it is to go beyond the boundaries there. Customizing our actions, looking for ways to show our compassion and the power of intentions and how important that is. And so, we get to some other things that we have to celebrate. When I first started working with the port, and Kristen and Katrina and others, one of the first projects they told me about was what was going on with Gloria and the Turner Station stakeholders and how engaged they were. And so now, again, pretend you're at your favorite concert and give them a round of applause for all the things. Thank you so much for hosting us, but also as we look at the things that they're doing in outreach and education, heritage, and recreational events, as well as faith-based organizations getting engaged in the process. And we're proud of what you all are doing. Now, I could have also spoken about some of the other community organizations that are also here in the room, and you know who you are, and you're doing some great things too, and we're so proud of that. Again, riding the wave of change. That's what it means to engage stakeholders, knowing that times have changed, people have changed, politics have changed, knowing that we have to go beyond our boundaries and to be the best for the world. So that leads me to the next one, which is Masonville Cove. And again, that's something that I have really had the privilege working at U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as a fish and wildlife biologist in Massachusetts, Wisconsin, Missouri, Minnesota, and all those places. It's here at Masonville Cove that my heart smiles when I see all the great work that's been going on there. A decade of dedication. And that in itself is something that we have to celebrate. As we look at all the things they are doing there, the educational opportunities, over 2,000 students a year. How popular is that? That role model for energy efficiency. That great partnership with Living Classrooms Foundation as well as the National Aquarium. Working as a partner, getting things done, leveraging resources. And also the fact that I was a part as the Assistant Director at U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Chief of Fisheries in this country, we had a chance to watch and weigh and judge all of the urban partnerships throughout the country. And this one made the list. Out of all those that we got, Masonville Cove became an urban wildlife partnership. Again, that deserves a round of applause. Bringing our best to the community, and that's what the port is doing. And they're working hard to make sure that happens. With people like Lorraine and others making it happen. And so I'm excited about what they've done in 2019 and what they plan to do in the future. get ready for a new website, Danielle and others, right? Websites coming along. And then recognition, praise and recognition is so important. And they have already started getting some recognition for sustainable engagement from those stakeholders. And also, lots of great visitors. In fact, Mr. Grumbles was there not too long ago. Kristen has done a great job of inviting others. And so, getting people to know about the great work that's going on there. I'm excited to help us figure out ways to get our private partners engaged that are looking for opportunities. This organization works hard to engage stakeholders. They realize that there's a lot more work to be done, and they're reflective and transparent. They have their reality check, and they realize we haven't done everything right, but the songwriter says we fall down, but we get up. We fall down, but we get up. Winners are losers that fall down and get back up again and again and again. And so they realize that some of the things they're doing, we may have to course correct them. But other things they're doing, they're going to keep doing them and do them better. Bringing the best of the poor to the people with transformational actions. And how important is that? Being true champions of change. Creative and possibility thinking is what's important. Again, riding the waves of change, going beyond our boundaries, and being our best for the world. They're doing all of those things. Vital, active, and relevant programs right there at Masonville Cove, right over at Turner Station, and throughout the Baltimore community, and throughout Maryland to come. And so when we think about 2020, our vision is a vision of more great things. And I end this presentation, and I've already heard Dr. Goodwin said that you can sing along on some of his slides. And in fact, I'm going to ask you to sing along, because when I tell this story, I hope you'll sing with me. It was about 10 years ago this month that I had the privilege of being married to a man for over 21 years. Had worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for almost 30 years. It was this time when my husband came to me and he said, one of your problems is the fact that you are married to your job. And he said, I want a divorce because you haven't spent a lot of time with the family and this life. And he said, I don't want to take you away from what's important to you. And so he said, I'm going to leave in 3 months. And that was really hard for me. And when I talk about being a love machine, I encourage you all to fight for what you love. Fight for your stakeholders to be in the process. Fight for your natural resources to be there for you. So we fought for the marriage. We were able to save that marriage. And then 2 years later, he came to me. He said he was leaving. This time I was like Gloria Gaynor. Go out the door, don't turn around. But this time I wasn't listening. He was leaving this time because he was dying. At the age of 50, he had stomach cancer, and he was about to die. And it was in his dying that I learned to live. I learned about stakeholders that had been with me and that I had worked with in all of those states throughout this country, because it was that community of people from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, my other stakeholders and friends that came to help me take care of him with his final wishes. Those wishes were that every day would feel like Christmas. And so, it was this one particular day, he was really sad and I was sad, but he said, I'm going to cheer you up because you're going to think about what your mother told you to do. And he said, and every time you're sad, you think of this song. And so when you're dealing with stakeholders, when you're trying to celebrate what's right in the world, hopefully this song will help you. And let's sing it right now. The song says, roll, roll, roll your boat. You ready? Yes, let's do this. 1, 2, 3. Roll, roll, roll your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Now, you know what? I want to hear those guys in that deep, very white voice sing. The problem in this world, I think, is particularly men and a lot of white men in general, they have it hard these days. And so I want to celebrate the men in this room. And I feel like they need to be celebrated because there's a lot more good men than there are bad men out there. And we have a tendency to hear about those. And we need men involved and stakeholders too. So men, are you ready? And women, what I want you all to do when they're done is cheer them on. All right, 1, 2, 3, let's go. Roll, roll, roll your boat gently down the street. Sounds good. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Thank you so much. I am serious about this. I think we do need to celebrate both men and women because, again, synergy is all about working together. And when we think about engaging stakeholders, sustainable stakeholders, we need to know roll, 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 don't stop, roll, 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 don't quit. And then it says roll, roll, roll your boat. Sometimes that means stay in your lane. Roll, roll, roll your boat. Stay in your lane. And then it says gently. Gently. We don't always have to be Rambo either. Gently. Genesis down the stream. That's all about moving ahead. Down the stream. Merrily is the one that I like because it says you don't have to look all mean and hateful. You can look so much better and be happy about the work that you do. Choose happiness. And then finally it says life is but a dream. I dream that in 2020, that we celebrate what's right in the world, that we continue to ride on the wave of change, and that we go beyond our boundaries when it comes to our work in conservation, in the economy, and in engaging our stakeholders. Thank you very much.